March 20, 1998, Grove City, Ohio. Stanley Meyer sits in a restaurant parking lot, clutching his throat. Minutes earlier, he'd been celebrating with potential investors, discussing the water-powered dune buggy parked outside, the vehicle that ran on ordinary water. No gasoline, no emissions, just hydrogen extracted from H2O through a process he'd spent 17 years perfecting. He told his brother the investors had poisoned him. Within hours, he was dead. The official cause, a cerebral aneurysm, natural causes, but the timing was anything but natural. Meyer had just secured international attention. His patents were solid. Multiple witnesses had seen the dune buggy run, and then he was gone. This is not an isolated incident. Across decades and continents, a pattern emerges. Inventors develop technologies that threaten established industries. They demonstrate working prototypes. They attract attention from powerful interests. Then they vanish. Sometimes their deaths are ruled natural, sometimes accidental. Sometimes they simply disappear, taking their inventions with them. What follows are 10 documented cases, 10 lives cut short, 10 revolutionary technologies lost to history. Stanley Meyer's water fuel cell wasn't science fiction. He'd been granted multiple U.S. patents, including patent 4,936,961 for a method for the production of a fuel gas. The device used electrical resonance to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen, then burned the hydrogen as fuel. Independent witnesses verified the dune buggy traveled from Ohio to Kentucky on 22 gallons of water. Meyer faced immediate opposition. He was sued by investors who claimed fraud, though the case was settled and charges never proven. His patents were challenged. Anonymous threats arrived at his home. Still, he continued developing the technology, convinced it would liberate humanity from petroleum dependence. The day he died, Meyer met with Belgian investors interested in funding international production. The meeting went well. They moved to a nearby restaurant to celebrate. During the meal, Meyer ran outside, violently ill. His brother Stephen rushed to his side. Meyer's last words suggested poisoning. "They poisoned me." The coroner found no evidence of poison. Brain aneurysm, the report concluded. His age and health history made it plausible, but the water fuel cell technology died with him. His research notes vanished. The dune buggy prototype disappeared into private hands. No one has successfully replicated his exact process. Some dismiss Meyer as a fraud, pointing to the lawsuit. But patents aren't granted for impossible devices. Witnesses weren't hallucinating, and the timing of his death at the moment of potential breakthrough raises questions that natural causes alone cannot answer. Eugene Mallove saw the future in a jar of heavy water. The MIT-trained physicist and science writer had become convinced that cold fusion was real, reproducible, and systematically suppressed by mainstream science. He'd resigned from his position at MIT in protest over what he considered fraudulent reporting of cold fusion experiments. By 2004, he was editor of Infinite Energy magazine, publishing research the establishment refused to acknowledge. Cold fusion promised unlimited clean energy. If heavy water could produce more energy than it consumed through low-temperature nuclear reactions, the implications were staggering. No radiation, no waste, no fuel costs beyond water. Mallove dedicated his career to proving it worked. On May 14, 2004, Mallove drove to his childhood home in Norwich, Connecticut. The property had been rented out, but the tenants were being evicted. Mallove planned to clean the house for new renters. He never returned. His body was found 2 days later, beaten to death in the driveway. Police arrested the former tenants. The killing was ruled a robbery gone wrong, motivated by a rent dispute. The official narrative was convenient. Too convenient, some argued. Mallove had been receiving death threats for years. He'd publicly accused powerful institutions of scientific fraud. He was on the verge of publishing breakthrough cold fusion research from multiple laboratories, then a random act of violence. His killers were convicted, serving time for murder, but questions persisted. Why target Mallove specifically when simpler robbery opportunities existed? Why the extreme violence? And why did cold fusion research lose its most vocal advocate at such a critical moment? The timing, as with Meyer, was suspicious. The circumstances, explainable, but the pattern was forming. Maurice K. Jessup didn't just vanish, he was erased. The astronomer and ufologist had written extensively about anti-gravity, unified field theory, and the alleged Philadelphia experiment. His book sold well. His lectures drew crowds. He corresponded with military officials about experimental physics. Then, on April 20th, 1959, his body was found in his car in Dade County, Florida. Carbon monoxide poisoning, suicide, the coroner ruled. Jessup had been depressed, friends confirmed. Financial troubles, personal problems. But the details didn't align with a man ready to die. Hours before his death, Jessup had called researcher Ivan Sanderson, excited about a breakthrough. He had new evidence, he said, proof of anti-gravity research being conducted in secret. He was going to meet someone who could confirm everything. He sounded optimistic, energized, not suicidal. The police investigation was cursory. No autopsy photos were taken. No fingerprints lifted from the hose connecting exhaust to window. The death was ruled suicide within days, and the case closed. Jessup's research materials disappeared. His correspondence with military officials never recovered. The manuscripts he'd been working on, describing recovered alien technology and secret government experiments, vanished from his office. Some investigators later claimed Jessup had stumbled onto classified military research into electromagnetic propulsion. His books had detailed theoretical frameworks for anti-gravity that were uncomfortably close to actual experiments. Whether he was silenced or genuinely took his own life, his death removed a persistent voice questioning official narratives about advanced physics. The pattern was becoming clearer. Breakthrough announcement, promising evidence, then sudden death under questionable circumstances. Stefan Marinov was a dissident in every sense. The Bulgarian physicist had fled communist Bulgaria, survived imprisonment, and dedicated his life to proving Einstein wrong. His experiments with permanent magnet motors suggested the possibility of perpetual motion, violating accepted thermodynamics. Mainstream science dismissed him. He didn't care. He kept experimenting, kept publishing, kept challenging orthodoxy. By 2013, Marinov had spent decades on the fringe, publishing his own journal, conducting experiments in modest apartments across Europe. He was broke, isolated, but convinced his magnetic motor worked. He claimed efficiencies above 100%, impossible by conventional physics. On July 15, 2013, Stefan Marinov's body was found on the pavement outside the main library of the University of Graz, Austria. He had fallen from the building. The death was ruled suicide. Depression, authorities said. Financial hardship, academic rejection. Marinov had left no note. Friends described him as frustrated but not despairing. He'd been planning new experiments, corresponding about potential funding. The fall happened in broad daylight, yet no witnesses came forward. Security footage from the library was never released. The autopsy report contained inconsistencies about the trajectory of the fall. His laboratory notebooks and experimental devices disappeared from his apartment before family could claim them. Marinov's death followed the pattern precisely. An outsider challenging fundamental physics, working devices that violated accepted theory. Sudden death, missing evidence. Official story accepted without deep investigation. The establishment breathed easier. One less voice claiming the impossible. One less working model suggesting energy could be harvested from magnetic fields indefinitely. Degius operated in the shadows by necessity. The Dutch inventor's magnetic motor design emerged in the late 1970s, promising electrical generation without external fuel. Unlike others, Degius was careful. He demonstrated the device only to select investors. He filed no patents that would expose the design. He moved frequently, paranoid about surveillance. His precautions weren't enough. In 1979, Degius agreed to demonstrate his motor to a group of financiers interested in manufacturing it. The meeting was scheduled for Rotterdam. Degius packed his prototype and documentation. He boarded a train. He never arrived. Degius, his prototype, and his research notes vanished somewhere between Amsterdam and Rotterdam. No body was found. No police report was filed, at least none that remained accessible. Friends who inquired were told to stop asking questions. Rumors circulated for years. Some claimed Degius had been paid off, relocated to South America with enough money to disappear voluntarily. Others insisted he'd been killed, his body dumped in canals outside Rotterdam. The most persistent story suggested he'd been taken to a corporate research facility, forced to replicate his invention, then eliminated once the design was understood and shelved. No evidence supported any version, but the magnetic motor design vanished with him. Later inventors claimed to have recreated similar devices, but none matched the efficiency witnesses described from Degius's demonstrations. What makes Degius's case particularly haunting is the complete erasure. No death certificate, no missing person investigation, no paper trail beyond a few witness statements from people who saw the motor run. One man, one invention, both wiped from history as if they'd never existed. Royal Raymond Rife built a microscope that could see viruses. In the 1930s, when electron microscopes were crude and expensive, Rife's optical innovation achieved magnification levels that allowed him to observe living viruses in their natural state. More remarkably, he claimed to have discovered that specific electromagnetic frequencies could destroy these viruses without harming surrounding tissue. Rife called it the beam ray. He demonstrated it on animals, then humans, treating cancer, tuberculosis, and other diseases. Doctors witnessed tumor remissions. Patients recovered. The American Medical Association took notice, not with approval, but with alarm. In 1939, Rife's laboratory was raided. Equipment was confiscated. Research notes disappeared. The microscope, described as the most powerful optical device ever created, was smashed. Partners who'd worked with Rife recanted their support, citing pressure from medical boards. Rife spent the next decades fighting lawsuits, enduring raids, watching his work dismantled systematically. Every time he rebuilt equipment, it was confiscated. Every time he found funding, pressure was applied to cut it off. He died in 1971, broken and alcoholic, his frequency healing technology condemned as quackery. Modern researchers have attempted to recreate Rife's work with mixed results. Some claim frequencies can indeed affect cellular biology. Others find no effect. But the original microscope, which would settle questions about what Rife actually observed, was destroyed. The complete research documentation, which would allow replication, disappeared during those raids. Rife didn't vanish in the traditional sense. He lived, degraded, and discredited, his technology methodically erased. Sometimes suppression doesn't require death. Sometimes destroying the work and the reputation achieves the same result. Nikola Tesla's death on January 7, 1943, was not mysterious. The 86-year-old inventor died of heart failure in his New York hotel room, alone and impoverished. What happened immediately after, however, followed a pattern we've seen before. Within hours of the body's discovery, FBI agents entered Tesla's room. They confiscated papers, research notes, experimental designs. Tesla had been working on several classified projects during World War II, including particle beam weapons he called death rays and wireless energy transmission systems. The official story claimed the materials were reviewed by the Office of Alien Property, found to contain nothing of value, and eventually released to Tesla's family. But witnesses reported seeing trucks removing equipment from storage facilities Tesla had rented. Documents described in his final years never appeared in the returned papers. Among the missing items, designs for wireless energy transmission towers that could deliver electricity anywhere in the world without wires. Notes on tapping energy from the ionosphere. Theoretical frameworks for particle beam weapons capable of shooting down aircraft at hundreds of miles. Some of these technologies were later developed independently, suggesting Tesla had indeed made breakthroughs that were merely premature. Others remained theoretical, their potential locked in documents that may still exist in classified archives. Tesla's case differs from the others. He died of natural causes at an advanced age. But the systematic seizure and classification of his final work followed the same suppression pattern. Revolutionary technology, promising to disrupt established industries, removed from public access and buried in vaults. The difference is scale. Tesla's seizure was official, authorized, executed by government agencies. It lent legitimacy to suppression, suggesting national security rather than corporate interest. But the result was identical. Technology lost to history. Wilhelm Reich saw energy everywhere. The Austrian psychoanalyst turned renegade physicist claimed to have discovered a fundamental force he called orgone, present in living things and the atmosphere. He built devices to accumulate this energy, metal-lined boxes that supposedly concentrated orgone for therapeutic purposes. Cancer patients reported remissions, psychological conditions improved, Reich attracted followers, and, inevitably, attention from authorities. The Food and Drug Administration took an interest in 1947. They investigated Reich's claims, found no scientific basis for orgone energy, and in 1954 obtained an injunction forbidding Reich from selling orgone accumulators or claiming health benefits. Reich refused to acknowledge the court's authority, insisting scientific questions couldn't be settled by legal decree. The defiance cost him everything. FDA agents raided his laboratory in Maine, destroying orgone accumulators with axes. They seized 6 tons of his research journals, books, and papers. Then they burned them, literally burned them, in an incinerator, eliminating decades of research and theoretical work. Reich was convicted of contempt of court for violating the injunction. He was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison. On November 3, 1957, 8 months into his sentence, Reich died in his cell at Lewisburg Penitentiary. Heart failure, the official cause. He was 60 years old. Mainstream science dismisses orgone energy as pseudoscience. No reproducible experiments have confirmed its existence. But that doesn't explain the ferocity of the suppression. If Reich was simply a deluded crank, why burn his books? Why imprison an aging researcher for ideas considered harmless nonsense by the scientific establishment? Reich's suppression was public, documented, and executed by federal authority. It set precedent for how authorities could eliminate research deemed dangerous, not through scientific refutation, but through legal force and physical destruction. Thomas Henry Morey survived assassination attempts. The Salt Lake City inventor claimed to have developed a device that extracted electrical energy directly from radiation in the atmosphere. No fuel, no moving parts, just steady electrical output from a box containing capacitors and specially treated materials. Morey demonstrated his radiant energy device hundreds of times between 1925 and 1940. Witnesses included electrical engineers, scientists, and investors. The device powered lights, motors, and heaters, drawing energy from an unknown source. Morey theorized it tapped cosmic radiation, converting it to usable electricity. Interest from power companies was immediate and hostile. Morey was offered substantial sums to shelve the technology. He refused. His laboratory was burglarized repeatedly, materials stolen, threats arrived by mail and phone. In 1940, someone shot at Morey while he was driving. The bullet missed, striking his car. He reported the incident to police but refused to stop his work. The harassment intensified. Unknown men followed him. His laboratory was raided again, this time destroying components he couldn't easily replace. Morey spent years trying to patent his device, but patent offices rejected the applications, claiming the invention violated thermodynamic laws. Without patent protection, he couldn't manufacture or sell the technology without risk of theft. He built more prototypes, demonstrated them to new audiences, but couldn't overcome the institutional resistance. He died in 1974. His radiant energy device never commercialized. Replicas attempted by later researchers have failed to match the power output witnesses described. Critical components Morey used, materials he processed through proprietary methods, were never fully documented. The knowledge died with him. John Worrell Keely claimed he could power motors with pure vibration. In 1872, the Philadelphia inventor demonstrated his etheric force motor, a machine that allegedly drew energy from sound vibrations to produce mechanical work. Investors poured money into the Keely Motor Company, convinced they'd witnessed the future of industry. Keely demonstrated the motor thousands of times over 26 years. Witnesses described objects levitating, massive weights lifted by acoustic vibrations, engines running on frequencies produced by tuning forks and resonating chambers. Scientists of the era couldn't explain it. Investors couldn't replicate it. Keely refused to reveal the underlying principles, claiming the world wasn't ready for such power. He died suddenly in 1898. Within days, investigators searching his workshop found evidence of fraud, compressed air lines hidden in the basement, tubes concealed in walls, tanks providing the force his etheric motor appeared to generate through vibration alone. The case seemed closed. Keely was a charlatan, his motors clever frauds. But inconsistencies remained. Some demonstrations occurred in locations where compressed air couldn't explain the results. Witnesses described effects the hidden apparatus couldn't produce. Keely's notebooks, filled with theories about molecular vibration and resonance, suggested genuine investigation, not simple deception. Perhaps Keely had discovered something real, then augmented it with fraud when genuine results proved unreliable. Perhaps the hidden apparatus was planted after his death to discredit everything he'd done. Or perhaps he was simply a talented showman who fooled thousands. What's certain is that Keely's sudden death prevented him from defending his work or revealing its secrets. The comprehensive debunking that followed eliminated any chance of separating genuine innovation from theatrical deception. Another life ended before truth could be established. Another technology lost in circumstances that raised more questions than they answered. The pattern across these 10 cases is undeniable. Inventors develop technologies threatening established industries, energy, transportation, medicine. They demonstrate working prototypes. They attract attention from corporations and governments. Then they die, disappear, or have their work destroyed. Some deaths were clearly suspicious. Meyer's sudden collapse, Mallove's murder, Degius's disappearance. Others appeared natural, but occurred at critical moments. Jessup before his meeting, Marinov when planning new experiments, Tesla when his wartime projects neared completion. The suppression took multiple forms: legal harassment, destroying Reich's work, patent office rejection blocking Morey's commercialization, systematic raids confiscating Reich's equipment, FBI seizure of Tesla's papers, physical violence and intimidation against those who persisted. What all 10 cases share is the complete loss of the technology. Not gradual obsolescence, not competitive failure, but active elimination. Prototypes destroyed or disappeared. Research notes seized or burned. Patents blocked or buried. Knowledge holders dead or silenced. Consider the human cost. 10 brilliant minds, some trained scientists, others self-taught geniuses, all dedicated to advancing human capability. They died, broke, discredited, or murdered. Their families were left with nothing but stories of what might have been. Their contributions were erased from scientific history, relegated to conspiracy theory and fringe speculation. The technologies they developed could have transformed civilization. Free energy would eliminate resource wars and environmental destruction. Water-based fuel would end petroleum dependence. Frequency healing would revolutionize medicine. Anti-gravity would change transportation fundamentally. But transformation threatens existing power structures. Oil companies don't profit from water-powered cars. Pharmaceutical corporations lose billions if frequencies cure cancer. Governments controlling energy resources lose geopolitical leverage if energy becomes free. The incentive to suppress isn't speculative, it's measured in trillions of dollars and global dominance. Whether each death was murder, convenient accident, or tragic coincidence is less important than the aggregate pattern. 10 inventors, 10 revolutionary technologies, 10 eliminations. The statistical probability of coincidence decreases with each case. And these are only the documented cases, the ones with enough evidence to construct narratives. How many other inventors disappeared without witnesses? How many technologies were suppressed before reaching prototype stage? How many brilliant minds were discouraged early, warned off, or bought out before making their discoveries public? The implications extend beyond historical curiosity. If suppression occurred systematically in the past, it likely continues today. Modern inventors working on breakthrough energy systems, unconventional propulsion, or revolutionary medical devices face the same forces. Patent offices still reject applications that violate accepted physics. Corporations still buy up promising technologies and shelve them. Researchers still die in timely accidents. The mechanism of suppression has evolved, become more sophisticated. Instead of physical destruction, technologies are acquired through venture capital, then never developed. Instead of murder, reputations are destroyed through media campaigns. Instead of patent rejection, endless legal challenges drain resources until inventors give up. But the goal remains identical: prevent disruptive technologies from reaching the public. Maintain profitable systems. Preserve existing power structures. Control remains with those who control energy, transportation, and medicine. These 10 inventors challenged that control. They paid the ultimate price. Their technologies were buried with them, lost to humanity, sacrificed to preserve the status quo. The question isn't whether suppression occurred. The evidence is too consistent, the pattern too clear. The question is whether it can be overcome. Can technologies this disruptive survive the forces arrayed against them? Can inventors protect themselves, document their work thoroughly enough, distribute knowledge widely enough to prevent erasure? Some argue that information technology has changed the equation. The internet allows instant global distribution. Blockchain can create permanent records. Crowdfunding bypasses traditional investors. Perhaps the next revolutionary inventor won't be silenced as easily, but suppression adapts. Cyber attacks erase digital records. Misinformation campaigns discredit inventors before their work is understood. Legal frameworks expand to criminalize technologies deemed dangerous. The tools change, but the fundamental dynamic remains. Those with power will fight to keep it. What happened to these 10 inventors should enrage anyone who values human progress. Breakthrough technologies were destroyed, not through scientific refutation, but through force and fraud. Brilliant lives were cut short not by natural limits, but by deliberate action. The future they tried to build was stolen, replaced with a present that enriches the few while limiting the many. If these stories disturb you, consider how much knowledge has been lost. Consider what technologies might exist today if these inventors had lived to refine their work, if their research had continued, if their prototypes had been manufactured. We don't know what we don't know. The suppressed possibilities are, by definition, invisible to us. These 10 cases represent what we can document. They are the tip of a much larger pattern. For every inventor whose death raised questions, dozens more may have been silenced without leaving evidence. For every technology demonstrably suppressed, countless others may have been eliminated before reaching public awareness. If these stories intrigue you, consider subscribing to Investigator Squirrel. There are more buried inventions, more silenced voices, and more mysteries waiting to surface. What other technologies have been erased from history? Share your theories in the comments below.